So today is going to be really for the projectors. So how many projectors? We have four projectors here. Yeah. So this is really for them. We're going to explore a technique that's useful for everyone, but it's really this is going to be for the projectors because there's four types, and of the types, the projectors, what's most important to them is the people in their life. It really is. As a projector, you're here to connect to the people in your life. I'm a generator, so I'm here to do work. And as long as we as generators are doing satisfying work, we're fine. We're here to work. It's the most important thing in the world for us. And it's basically a generator's world. 70% of people have defined sacral. And so this is a world of work. This is a world of building. This is a world of activity. And for the generator, the single most important question is, what are you spending your energy on? If you're a generator and you're going to a job you hate, that's death. But if you're a projector and you're surrounded by people who don't recognize you, who ignore you, you're invisible to, or they see you a different way, they're just not the right people for you, then that is also a slow death, right? So as a generator, it's all about work. As a projector, it's mostly about the people in your life. You're here to guide people. As a manifestor, you're fairly independent. You're really looking for your peace. And as a reflector, you're here to kind of sample and be a part of many different communities and kind of be the yardstick for the health of the community. But it's different than the intense one-on-one connection that a projector has. The projector is all about locking in one-on-one with one other person at a time in order to guide that person. And that's really what success means to them. So before I go into this technique, which is going to be involving motivation, we're going to talk about what our true motivations are, and I'll be giving examples of the 6 motivations. But before that, it's going to actually be, I want to just talk a little bit about what it's like to be a projector. And if any projectors want to jump in, you're all welcome to, because I'm not a projector. But as I understand it, as a projector, you're really not here to work. This isn't your world. You get burned out. I mean, it's not to say that projectors can't work. They can. In fact, they can work so hard. Because anytime you don't have something, you have the potential to amplify it, to prove how good you are. So you find all these projectors who are like super generators. They're out there trying to prove how hard workers they can be, how much they can do. They're biting off so much more than they can chew. And they're just work, work, work. And I find projectors who work 60-hour weeks, and that's not what you're here for, right? You're here to guide people, to coordinate people, to direct the use of energy. That's what it's really about. But it's a generator's world. It's not a projector's world, right? So it's really hard. The challenge for the projector is to know who the right people are in their lives that they can then guide. And then they get recognition from that. But the other thing to realize about being a projector is that there's nothing moment to moment about how a projector is designed. The projectors are really, it's long term. See, I'm a generator, so my dichotomy is between satisfaction and frustration. And that's a really moment to moment thing. For me, I can be so frustrated that I can't, so frustrated trying to build something, trying to fix my car or something like that. And then I keep persevering and I finally break through and I have that moment of satisfaction of finishing it. And this is a very momentary thing. Projectors, the dichotomy is between success and bitterness. And that bitterness is not a momentary thing. It's not like you're bitter one moment and you just get sweet the next day. Bitterness is becoming jaded. Bitterness is becoming cynical. Bitterness happens over years and years and years. 20 years go by and the projector realizes they're bitter. And it takes 20 years to lose that bitterness too. You see what I'm saying? It's the deeper you go into the bitterness, the harder it is to get out. So the projector has the potential to really become sour to life. I'm talking like the deepest souring and cynicism and pessimism and bitterness over just getting a raw deal in life. You never find a generator like that. Generators can be deeply frustrated, but the moment something happens where they're once again using their energy successfully or as they want, they become satisfied again. So again, it's a moment-to-moment thing. So the reason it's so important for generators to follow their strategy and authority, which is to trust their bodily intelligence, is because that if the generator actually responds to something and goes, oh yeah, I want to fix that car, then when it gets really frustrating and you drop the screw down in the engine and you're trying to get it, actually Vaughn helped me with this the other day. We put a magnet on a butter knife to get it out. It was great. But when that happens, that moment of frustration, you'll persevere as a generator because you're in it, you're committed to it. And then you get the satisfaction that is the reward at the end. For projectors, it's a completely different dynamic. It's not something so simple as that. It's not like, as a projector, you just simply find your success in life and find your recognition in life through persevering through adversity. As generators, generators are the great quitters. That's the thing for us generators. The way that we stop being quitters is by actually doing things that we sacrally respond to and we actually really want to do, and then we're actually in it. But instead, so many generators out there are trying to force themselves to do it. Oh, I hate my job, and I'm going to force myself to do this job because I'm supposed to do this job. I should do this job, and that's just like a slow death for us. But for the projectors, so this is what I'm going to give you. But before we start, I just want to kind of paint the picture. Like, what is this for? I just really want to get through the idea that projectors move at a different time frame. It's not a moment-to-moment time frame. It's a time frame where projectors get locked into things. They enter into a relationship. They might be in that relationship for 7 years or for 10 years. They get locked in without realizing it. They get locked into a job. They get locked into a place where they're going to live. For projectors, they get locked in for these exceedingly long time frames where it's really hard for them to get out of whatever it is they've locked into. It's kind of what they're here for, is for this, deep connection. But if they're connecting to the wrong person, see, here's what we, in this culture, like, nobody really realizes how much we're taking in the other. How much just being in the presence of another person. It's like the old kind of cannibalistic joke, don't spend time with somebody that you wouldn't eat if you were stuck in a desert island, because you're actually ingesting them. You're ingesting their aura. You're ingesting their energy. And being a projector, you're so sensitive to the energies of others. If you're in a relationship with someone who's deeply frustrated, you're eating that frustration as your daily meal. If you're around a generator, you're taking in that sacral buzz, that sacral energy. This is why it's most important of all for projectors to sleep alone. It's good for everybody, but for projectors, it's very important, and to also have about an hour before they go to sleep each night to kind of clear all the energy of the day that they take in. So what can projectors do if your strategy is such long-term strategy? The strategy of the projector is to wait for the invitation, to really wait for that invitation, to be invited. And then a lot of projectors ask me, what do I do in the meantime? And the general thing you would say is, well, you make yourself as invitable as possible. Like, you kind of cultivate something that you're hoping to be recognized for. So it's like the great actor who spends all their time acting, and then, they get recognized and invited to act on Broadway or something. That would be like a projector success story. Or, they're invited because their talents are recognized. They're invited to found a company or to be the CEO of a company and guide that company because their leadership skills are recognized, something like that. But, that doesn't really help projectors in the day-to-day of, how do I know I'm on the right track? How do I know I'm in the right place? How do I know I'm with the right people? How do I recognize the people in my life who are really my allies? Because you can't do it alone. You really need allies in this life. We all need allies. And as a generator, it's so easy. We have the sacral response, Hey, do you want to hang out with that person? Nah. Okay, well, that person's not good for you, Do you want to hang out with that person? Oh, yeah, I love hanging out with that person. Then great, right? As a generator, you just kind of trust whether, your body comes alive and you're galvanized and energized at the thought of being around somebody, or whether you're kind of wilting and, recalcitrant and kind of annoyed by that person. And as a generator, we can learn to recognize that pretty easily. It's really easy for us to actually learn to recognize in that moment to moment who is correct for us. Because there's some people, you see their name in the text message, you just go, that's a generator thing. You just sigh, you just know, there's no way, I don't want to, no, I can't, Or like the person leaves, you're like, God, they're finally gone. And like you're just drained. Other people, you see them and it completely energizes you, and you just come to life and you just jump out of your chair with energy. So as a generator, that's what we have. What do you have as a projector? Well, what you have is motivation. And it's kind of a subtle thing that you'll learn to notice. because there's a correct motivation. It's a correct driving force, what actually motivates you in this life. And some people are going to align you to that motivation. And you're going to be able to notice. I'm going to teach you how to notice this, basically. That's what this whole topic is going to be. How do you know what your correct motivation is, and what are some examples of it? So you notice who aligns you to that correct motivation, and then who pulls you away from it. And what they'll pull you away towards is what's called the transference of that motivation. It's the opposite motivation. And once you learn to see it, you can't unsee it. You'll see that certain people in your life, just like magnets, they're going to pull you away from that true motivation. So you're there, you're going along in your motivation, you're feeling like you're going in the right direction, everything's happening, and then you see this person and they just start to pull you away from it. They're just like a naysayer for whatever your true motivation is, and they get you away. They say, well, why are you doing that? Come on, let's, see it this other way. And they try to and it's amazing how tenacious these people can be. Once you notice it, you'll start to notice there are people who make it their personal agenda to pull you away from what you're doing. I can't tell you how much that's happened. I have desire as my motivation. I can't tell you how many people, when I get locked into something like I'm buying a house, start talking about it, and they start to poison it. Really just poison it. Just go, oh, why would you buy a house? I know this person who bought a house, the worst decision of their life. Let me tell you, I can't imagine why anyone would do that. That's not you. You don't need a house. What are you even trying to do? Who are you trying to be? You'd be amazed how much people will just dig into that. You have a question?
No, I was just.
Yeah. Okay. So let's get into these different motivations, and we'll see what they are. So there's 6 of them, and I'm just going to go over all 6. I'll give examples of each, and also how we're pulled away into our transference. And this is useful for everyone, even if you're not a projector. It's just especially valuable to the projectors because it really gives you a moment-to-moment thing to notice, to watch. Like you can just watch this play out with different people in your life. And you can watch, and you'll be surprised maybe. Somebody, you'll call somebody that you trust, a trusted advisor or a family member, and you'll start to notice, wow, they're just completely pulling me away from where my cognition is. Because what this truly is about is what you're cognitively equipped for. Each of us, human design is the science of differentiation, and it's about the differentiation of the different cognitive equipment that each of us possesses. And some of us are really good at some things and not good at all at others. And when we're trying to be what we're not, and we're pulled into that thing we're not very good at, we're just ignoring all of our cognitive gifts. And so that's really what it's about, is being aligned to your true cognitive gift. So the 6 motivations are fear, hope, desire, need, guilt, and innocence. And they are in pairs, so that if you're fear, you're probably being pulled into need. And if you're hope, you're being pulled into guilt. And if you're desire, you're being pulled into innocence. And vice versa for each of these.
Will you say them again?
Yeah. So the first one is fear. The second is hope. The third is desire. The fourth is need, which is the transference of fear. The fifth is guilt, which is the transference of hope. And the 6th is innocence, which is the transference of desire. And we're going to go through what these mean and what it really means to be cognitively equipped. But see, here's the thing. When we hear these words, we tend to have negative ideas of them. And the reason we have negative ideas of them is because the examples that we have are from people, it's their opposite. So for instance, I'm desire. That's mine. Well, you don't have a lot of examples of desire out there in the world because everybody doing desire is actually innocence. They should be aligned to their innocence, but instead they're out there trying to be leaders, trying to be motivational speakers, trying to be in charge, trying to, and I'll get to it, but what desire is kind of like the preacher on the pulpit who's preaching at you, who's like trying to align you. In fact, desire is at the heart of all motivation, and I'll explain to you how that works when we get to it. But for someone like me, to be aligned to my correct motivation means that I'm here to basically never give up on hammering home, almost like a hellfire damnation idea of be yourself, live your real desire, do it, and here's how. And it's a very can-do, go-get-it kind of thing. But then you find all these self-help teachers and self-help gurus, and they're actually innocents, and they're not supposed to have any agenda whatsoever. They're supposed to be just la-di-da about things, and instead they're out there preaching to you, but they're not doing it with the cognition to back it up because they don't actually know how to align you to your correct desire, so to speak. So anyway, so we'll get there, but we'll start with fear. And the reason I said that as kind of a preamble is because all of our examples of fear are from people who are truly motivated by need. They're truly cognitively equipped to know what others need, but they're ignoring all of that, and they're being pulled deep into their transference into fear. And so they're afraid of everything. And that's not what true fear is, right? The true motivation of fear is not just a blind, stupid fear that's afraid of everything. So who here is fear? Your fear, C, and then your fear, Vaughn. Is anybody else fear? Are you? Anybody else fear? Your fear?
Yeah.
Okay. So your true motivation is fear. This is not the examples of fear that we've been given by the world. The examples of fear we've been given are people who are fearful people. That's not what fear is about. What fear as a motivation is about is the root of intelligence. And the root of intelligence, this goes back to an evolutionary story of the very first kind of survival mechanism was the fear of the unknown. So then the need, fear and need are inextricably linked. They kind of go back and forth. But essentially the fear of the unknown that leads to the intelligence to learn. So this is all about learning and knowing. And so for you, what you're going to want to look for is somebody who says, well, how are you going to do that? I mean, it could be a 5-year-old kid who says it. It can be anybody. It can be it's the funniest thing where this comes from, the people who actually align you to your correct motivation. Because it's not who you might think. You might have a therapist or an advisor or someone that you really respect, and you come to them and you say, look, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do this. And they say, yeah, but don't you realize that, nobody needs that, and they're pulling you into need. I'm going to start this business. Well, does anybody really need that? I mean, it doesn't seem like, you're needed at your current job. Your family needs you to come here, or the partner who says, well, don't you know, I need you, or you should pay attention to where you're needed. The people who align you to need, which is totally unhealthy for you, are going to essentially be directing you to look where you're needed, or to look where you can meet somebody's needs, to look where the needs are, right? That's not correct for you. Instead, you say, hey, I'm thinking of starting this business. And someone goes, well, how are you going to do that? And you say, well, I'm going to do this and this and this. And they say, well, how does that work? And what they're doing is they're actually challenging you with fear, because then you get the surge of fear. Geez, maybe I don't know how it works. I better make sure I really know this. I better make sure I'm solid in this. See, fear is all about having a solid foundation. It's like for Vaughn. Vaughn will say, I'm going to LA. Well, how are you going to do that? Well, I'm going to take the bus. Well, how do you take the bus if you don't have this and this, And I'm continually, kind of trying to direct him, kind of challenging him in fear, right? But you can see how people like yourselves who are motivated by fear can be completely lost in need. You end up in some, relationship where you're so focused on the other person's needs, or you end up in a profession where you're all about filling the need. Not enough people are social workers, so I'm going to be a social worker to help, or whatever, right? I mean, there's all these examples you can think of where you can just get so lost in need. Well, the fact is, none of you are cognitively gifted at knowing correctly what the needs are. And so you end up going into need, and then you end up just making a big mess of it because you're trying so hard to meet their needs, but that's not aligned to your true cognition. What you're actually here to do is figure out how stuff works. And that's completely different, right? So again, it could be a 5-year-old kid who just says, well, how does that work? And then suddenly you're explaining it to them, and that's the correct one. Fear is also called the teacher. It's the teacher, right? And when you're a teacher, you're continually being challenged. Do you really know it? And how does it work? And so so just to take this with you, kind of to notice whenever you talk to somebody, if they're asking you how it works, and if you start to get a little scared, maybe I don't know how it works. Maybe I don't, then that's correct for you. You're on the right track. That's the good fear. If somebody just says instead, well, nobody needs that, or, God, that's not meeting anybody's needs, then, that's the wrong person for you. Is anybody hope? Do we have any hope people here? Hopeful. Okay, so hope. So here's the funny thing. So, and I say what your true motivation is. I've never met anybody, and I don't mean to be a jerk about it, but I've never met anybody who's really living out their true motivation, because we're so pulled. I mean, when I say transference, I don't just mean that you're a generally hopeful person and sometimes you're pulled into guilt, the transference, I mean that you've probably been living your entire life in guilt. And that guilt is not what people think. Guilt is basically taking personal responsibility and trying to fix things. I need to fix it. So the hopeful people out there are going around trying to fix things. And they're going, God, this situation at my work is so messed up. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to write up this thing and I'm going to send it to this person because that's going to fix it. Or, oh, the situation with my landlord. Oh, you know what? I know how to fix it. I'm going to write this thing and I'm going to do this and I'm going to change this. And they're constantly meddling and they're constantly tampering. You know, they're in a relationship and they're trying to fix everything. And they're taking personal responsibility for it. And it's so meddlesome. You know, it's all of... But here's the thing. You have a great cognitive gift. What is the cognitive gift of hope? Well, someone who has hope, it's the gift of knowing what's going to change and what isn't going to change. Because if you're truly gifted with this ability to know what's worth hoping for, right? To know what's worth hoping for. What is really worth hoping for? Then, you know, so let's think of some examples. So you say to someone, God, I'm having this problem at work, and they say, well, you know, what are you going to do about it? That's the wrong person for you, because they're saying it's your responsibility, you fix it. It's kind of that, you know, I make my own world sort of kind of radical self-reliance thing. That's terrible for you. That's completely wrong for you. It's probably how you lived your entire life, right? And sorry, I don't mean to be a jerk about it. I mean, believe me, I'll get to desire next, and that's me and, you know, Daniel and Michael, and I'm going to be taking some shots at us, so don't worry. It's coming. It's coming. But, you know, what it is then is instead that person says, well, what do you think is going to happen? Do you think it's going to change? That's the correct person for you, because you actually have this amazing cognitive gift of knowing what's going to change and what isn't. People who have hope can oftentimes be really good at the stock market because they're investing in a stock, and people say, you're crazy. There's nothing to indicate that's going to take off. And you go, oh, it's going to change, though. It's going to get better. And then everybody else is investing in this big popular thing, and you go, it's not going to stay that way forever. You know, it's having a nose for change, a nose for what's going to stay the same and what isn't. Now, on the opposite, you have people who are truly motivated by guilt. They're stuck in hope. They're the ones who are married to an alcoholic, and, you know, they're saying, oh, he's going to change, or whatever, and he never does, you know, because they don't actually know what's going to change or what isn't. But we'll get to them in a minute. So for you have this great cognitive gift of knowing what's going to change. So I would say at a high level, if the person says, you come to someone with a problem, if they say, you know, what are you going to do about it? That's the wrong person for you. If they say, well, what do you think is going to happen? Now we're talking, because they're getting you into your correct cognition of using your predictive powers to know what's possible, even no matter how unlikely. See, hope is not about likelihood. It's not like you do a calculation. This is likely to happen. That's unlikely. It's purely like what's possible. It's seeing the possibility nobody else sees. That's what hope is about. Now, desire, I know Daniel and myself and Michael are desire. Does anybody else here, your desire as well? Okay. So desire people, we're not actually, I mean, just tell me if this sounds a little, you know, familiar to you guys. Well, okay, I'll get to it in a moment. So first of all, desire is at the heart of all of the motivations. There's really only 5 motivations. There's fear, which is the desire to learn. There's hope, which is the desire for something to change or not change. There's desire itself, which is the heart of all motivation, which is kind of like a motivational speaker, preacher energy. There's need, which is the desire to meet people's needs or to fill gaps of what is needed to actually, you know, do what's needed. And then there's guilt, which is the desire to fix things and make them right and take personal responsibility for them. And then we have innocence. And innocence is a complete lack of all motivation. It's a lack of all desire. It's a lack of any agenda. It's a lack of any plan. It's a lack of any involvement, of any personal responsibility. Innocence isn't afraid, trying to figure it out. Innocence doesn't hope one thing or the other. Innocence doesn't want anything to happen. Innocence isn't trying to meet anybody's needs. Innocence isn't taking any responsibility for anything. It's just completely aloof. And that is how we've lived our entire lives. Getting high, playing guitar, that doesn't involve me, leave me out of it, I don't have any agenda, you know, why'd you do it? I was just curious, wanted to see what it's all about, you know, like trying to be observant. We're not supposed to be observant. We're not supposed to just, you know, I can't tell you how many relationships I've been in where I've been the guy with no agenda. Let's just see what happens, you know, or like going on a trip. Why are you going there? I don't know, I was kind of curious, see what it's all about. You know, no agenda, right? We're supposed to have an agenda for everything. We're not supposed to go to a party if we don't have an agenda. We're not supposed to go on a vacation if we don't have an agenda. We're not supposed to get lunch with somebody if we don't have an agenda. We are supposed to be downright Machiavellian, locked into our goals. We're supposed to plan and have goals and have, like, be as agenda-oriented as you can get. And it's all about locking in and being driven and never giving up in the face of so many naysayers, in the face of so many people who try to pull you away from it. So, you know, I was watching this thing yesterday about people who are making the Jerry Maguire pyramid. Has anyone seen that? The Jerry Maguire pyramid. They're the art collective. Took all the VHS tapes, Jerry Maguire. Yeah, and they're making it. Now, if that person was Desire, you'd have everyone telling them they're crazy and telling them, why the hell are you doing this? And they're going, I need to do it. I just need to. And they're locked into it and they won't stop. That would be healthy for them. But instead, you find all these people who are innocents, and instead they're living their lives as Desire beings, you know, and they don't really know what to be locked into. They're locked into the wrong things. They're trying to lead. We have the actual cognition to be leaders. We have the actual cognition to be preachers, so to speak. We are the priests and the preachers, and we're the ones who are actually here to align everybody else to their correct motivation. That's what we're here for. We're here to take all those innocence people and say, hey, go fuck off over there and sit on a hill and watch it happen and stop trying to lead everybody, stop trying to direct it. Tell all the fear people, what are you doing trying to meet their needs over there? How are you going to do this? You need to figure out your own survival. And we're supposed to tell all the hope people, stop meddling and trying to fix everything. You're making it worse. Just, go sit by the river and think about what's actually going to change or not, and that's what we're here to do. But it's so easy for us to just be pulled into innocence. The second somebody goes, that doesn't concern you, we're like, yeah, you're right, it doesn't. It doesn't concern me. I don't have to be involved. It's not my responsibility. What am I doing? I'm just going to go get high and play video games. That's so much better than actually being involved in, or we get so flexible with our, agenda. Well, sure, I want this, but I guess I could want that also. Maybe I want this third thing. Maybe I want all of them. I don't know, and that's not what it's about. That's not, desire is not infinite desire. Desire is locking into a desire. That's what it's about. So for us, the panacea is somebody says, so what's your plan? How are you going to do that? Similar to fear, right? You'll notice that fear, desire, and guilt are all parallels, just like hope, need, and innocence. And so the right thing for us is I'll say, I really want to get my screenplay out there. And they'll say, so what's your plan? Or they'll say, they'll ask me what I'm doing to further my agenda or my goal. And I'll say, well, I thought I was going to go on this trip. Well, are you bringing your screenplay along? Well, I don't know. I thought I'd just see what happens. And well, did you call some people to make some appointments with agents to deliver it to? That's the right person for us. It's like the one who keeps us on track, so that because it's so easy for us to squirm out of it and be like, I'm just going to go check out this place and see what it's all about and have no agenda and no goal, right? I can't tell you how profound it was when I realized I prided myself on not being agenda-driven, on being open-minded, right? On being like, and it's so funny how that works, right? You're in a relationship or something, and no, I'm just seeing where it goes. I mean, who knows how it'll end up? No, that's not correct for us. We're Desire. We're supposed to be like, this is what I want, and I'm not going to sway. We're supposed to be like, all about locking into it and being unyielding in it. So the correct person for us says, what's your plan? What steps are you taking to achieve that goal? The wrong person for us says, that's none of your business. Like, why would you care? Like, that's not your responsibility. Like, how come, who do you think you are to be telling them what they should be doing or something? That's the wrong person for us, because we're actually here to kind of call people out and get in their face about stuff. We're here to be involved. We're here to be right in the heart of the process. And our transference as Desire beings is to just be pulled out of that and just be all innocent and observant. And so it's funny, I never ask Desire people what they've noticed, because that makes them detached. I ask them what their goal is, what their agenda is. All right, anybody need? Or first of all, does anyone want a drink, a refresher? We're about halfway through the... All right, everyone's good. Who here is... Yeah, do it. Who here is need? Your need? Okay. Anybody want...
You should have said you welcome me to have a drink, but it's fine, I'll forget it. Just let me know that there are drinks available.
No,
It's like,
no,
we'll
there's
have to
that's
wait.
the
We'll have to wait the
nope, no waiting.
intermission.
You know how the local sign is?
What do you
Okay. Anybody else need anything? Or?
Thing where it says like manifester, da,
Oh,
da,
that
da.
one. I think you have to go to. Oh yeah.
It's weird on my phone. Strange, right?
Oh, here. There.
It's way different than on the
It's like a
computer.
slidey thing. So there's like kind of random symbols.
Desire boys in the house. All right, I'm gonna get through this, and then we can all just relax and have fun. So, there's only 3 left. So, thank you. All right, so so Danny is need. I guess that's the only person we have who is need. So, what does it mean to be need? Need is you really know what's needed. It's amazing when we think about this as actual cognitive gifts. Because the thing is, people aren't accessing them. I have a real cognitive gift to align people to their correct motivation. But I'm not accessing that when I'm sitting around playing guitar or playing video games or something, right? Or being uninvolved. Vaughn has a real cognitive gift to know how things work and figure out how things work. Figure out how to make money, to figure out how to come up from nothing, to figure out how to survive, ultimately. Fear and hope are both about survival. There's professional vagrant right there. But the thing is, Vaughn can't access that when he's surrounding himself with people that are pulling him into need. Oh, Vaughn, I need new shoes. Oh, Vaughn, I need you to do this. I need you to do that. It's not. Yes, please.
Wouldn't it be better to just find out who you are and not even talk to anybody? It sounds like that's what you're saying.
Maybe for you as a generator, because you're here to work, but even generators need people. And for projectors, that's death, because projectors are actually here to align themselves with the right people. All of us need allies. All of us need people. As much as you might want to be independent, we all really should strive for interdependence, because we're here to be aligned with our allies. And this is what I'm really telling you. This is how to find your allies, which is especially important for a projector. Again, the whole context for how we got into this is that the projector doesn't necessarily have any tools in the day-to-day to notice in that day-to-day fabric. You have tools for knowing when you've been recognized or when you've been invited for something big, like a relationship or a job or a place to live. You don't really have tools for just your day-to-day, and that's kind of what I'm hoping to give you all. So what does it mean to be a need person? Well, you have this great cognitive gift, which is really to know what's needed. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean someone's texting you and saying, I need to talk to you, I need to this. It's not saying that you're going to talk to them. It's that you know exactly what to tell them to meet that need. You know exactly what they actually need. These all go much deeper. I'm giving kind of a surface level. But what need is really about, like I kind of touched on it with fear being the teacher. I didn't really go through these. They're almost like evolutionary phases. And what need is about, if you're a need, you're either a master of something who is going on the trajectory of seeing the world with fresh eyes, or you're the novice on the trajectory to mastery. And that's something else that you can see in your chart, depending on if you're left or right variable, what direction you're going. But either way, you're basically either there's a theme of mastery as part of the theme of it, and it's really accessing. It's like having a mastery in a certain area where you know exactly what the thing needs. You know exactly. You're working on an interior design project. You know exactly what that room needs, or a bunch of higher ups are all arguing over something and they're all confused, and you know exactly what they need to calm them all down and get them back on track. It's like identifying, it's like pinpointing exactly what is needed in a situation and knowing how to fill those needs. You look out, you're a musician and you see all these different bands and you go, yeah, but there's there's a niche here where there's someone out there really needs this to sound like that to be mixed with this, and nobody's doing it. Or you're starting a restaurant. You know what, kind of restaurant Santa Fe really needs? They're not doing this. Do you know? Yeah. You do. Well, use your hope just to then tell me if it's going to happen or not. Is it hopeful or hopeless? Because with the cognition of hope, you'll know how hopeful or hopeless it is. But with need, it's the ability to recognize these niches. Now, the thing is, I know people with need, and I see this tremendous fear. Not like the good fear I was talking about, where the good fear is like the knowledge of how to survive or how to, the ability to learn. It's not about that. It's being transferred to this blanket fear. It's unwarranted fears. It's fear that prevents you from meeting those needs. So if somebody needs you, they're texting you and they're going, look, I really need to talk to you. And if you're in your cognition of need, you'll know exactly what to say to them in 5 words that meets their needs. But instead you're in fear, oh no, I'm just going to ignore that text. I don't have anything to do with that person, right? Or, the boss is saying, well, I'm really mad about this because this didn't get done in time. And if you're in line for need, you know exactly what to tell them to meet their needs to get them off your back. But in fear, it's, what am I going to do? It's like, you can see how need can transfer to, each of the transferences blocks the ability to really do the thing that you would be good at, right? So the fear gets in the way. You have this great gift of knowing exactly what needs to be done, but that blanket fear is just going to be like, they're crazy, unwarranted fears. They're fears, they're like bizarre fears. I've known people who have need, who come to me with the most bizarre, just fears that are just like out of the realm of possibility. They're so afraid of something that would never even happen, but to them it's such a real thing. And then I try to ask them, I say, well, what do you think needs to happen? And if they're deeply locked into fear, they won't be able to tell me because they'll just be saying, well, I need to get as far away from that person as possible because they're dangerous or something, And it's like, no, that's being led by your fear. What does that person need from you? What can you do to meet their needs? Even if it's just to tell them, look, I don't want to talk to you anymore. So it's interesting how that works, right? How need is really all about recognizing exactly what needs to happen and really having this tremendous gift for knowing what needs to happen. So the right people for you with need are going to be people who say, well, what do you think is missing here? What do you think hasn't happened that's supposed to happen or should happen? It's like filling in that missing gap. That's the right person for you. The wrong person is going to put you into fear, and they're going to say, they're going to, scare you. And they're going to say things that are really scary, or they're going to ask you how it works, too, which is another way of striking fear. They're going to say, well, how does that work? Well, I don't think that's a realistic possibility. Well, how is that going to be, And they're going to kind of put you onto, like, the wrong foot, so to speak, where then you're stuck thinking how you're going to make it work. You're not thinking about what needs to happen. Because, again, these are 2 different things. They're mutually exclusive. If you're like Vaughn and fear is good for you, then you're gifted at knowing how to make it work. And you need to not be focusing on what needs to happen and whose needs need to be met. All right, next we have guilt. Were you guilt or
I was,
Esther?
No, I was need.
Oh, so you're need also. So that was good. Okay, that was good for you too. I didn't realize that. Okay, I thought it was only Danny. So your need also. Yeah, so for you it's also so important to really use your cognitive gift to know what's missing and to know what gaps to fill, and instead of being afraid of things and just like running away from them when they come up. So do we have any guilt people here? Is there anybody with guilt? I guess not. I know. Okay, yeah, I know one person with guilt who's not here though. Well, I can just talk about it anyway because it's still useful. So if you're guilt, this is all about taking personal responsibility for things. Basically, if you're guilt, you have this cognitive gift of knowing exactly what action you can take. Because, so in this culture, we talk a lot about victim culture, and there's victim blaming on the one hand, and there's also people typically on the right wing who talk about self-victimization, and there's this whole discourse around what it means to be a victim or not. Well, basically, if your motivation is guilt, you have this tremendous cognitive gift of knowing what you can do, no matter how bad that situation is, no matter how restrictive you are, no matter how underprivileged, no matter how constrained. You could be working 70 hours a week with 8 kids and you're hooked on meth. If you're guilt, there's something you can do to help get out of that situation. and you can help others too, because you can tell them what they can do. Because everybody can do something, no matter how hopeless that situation feels, right? No matter how terrible, there's some concrete action that you can take. And it's the people who have guilt motivation who are actually here to tell us what those are for themselves and others, because they have this great cognitive gift. Sadly, they're stuck in hope. So these are the people that you find that, I didn't go into this level of it, but there's a sort of a metaphor for each of these, a sort of mystical metaphor. And the metaphor for hope is the demon. And you might say, well, why is the metaphor for hope a demon? Well, because it's a demonic hope for these people in that they're spending, they're hoping that their partner's not going to be an alcoholic. They're hoping that they're going to get off drugs. They're hoping that that this is going to happen, that's going to happen, that their kid's going to leave the gang, or, whatever the case is going to be. They're not taking any concrete action. That's what's amazing. These people who have guilt, who literally are cognitively equipped to know exactly what they're supposed to do to fix the situation, are just like, I'm just hoping it's going to change. And you find them hoping, they're the ones who play, these are the people who play the, lottery all the time. They're stuck in their hope. It's like a lost hope. It's really tragic when you see this happen. Because they have this tremendous gift that they're ignoring. And it's the gift of knowing exactly what concrete action to take. I was talking to someone who was motivated by guilt, who was complaining about her son's school and was saying, the teachers there are so bad. I really hope next semester is different. And then I said, well, is there anything you can do? No, there's nothing I can do at all. Nothing I can do. We already signed up. I just really hope they get better teachers. And that was it. It's like the final word. Like, that's it. Nothing I can do. It's just so. So you find people with guilt who are the most, it's just the way it is. Or I know someone with guilt motivation who has chronic pain, and I'll say, well, have you tried this? Doesn't matter. I have chronic pain, just the way it is. They're the people, all I can do is hope. I can just hope it gets better. It's like they are like the most fatalistic, all I can do is hope people there is, right? So for guilt, what I try to do is I try to say, well, what are you doing to fix that? Or, I try to put the responsibility back on them. Now, the bad people, for them, the ones who aren't correct, I'm not bad, but the ones who aren't correct in their life are going to be saying, well, do you think it's going to change? Well, do you think it's going to get any better? Because that puts them back into that hopeful conjecturing mode, where they can say, nope, I don't think it's going to change. Or, well, I do think it's going to change. But guess what? They don't have the cognition to actually know. You, Mary Frances, have that cognition, right? You actually have the ability to know what's going to change or not, right? Yeah. But being stuck in guilt is all about, well, what action can I take now to ensure this? Even then might be like, well, what can I do to verify this? I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to read about it and make sure that I actually, or whatever. It's like, what action can I take to do it? But you don't need to take any action. If you're hope, all you need to do, it's a perspective shift, right? For somebody who's guilt, when they're pulled into hope is when they're thinking about what's going to happen. That is poison for them. They need to not be thinking about what's going to happen. They need to be thinking about what action they can take. What degree of freedom do they have in that moment? Well, I can take my kid out of school, or I can write a letter to the teacher, or I could start a meeting with the other parents, or I could, you know what I mean? Like, that's what they need to be in, is what action can I take now? But instead, they're stuck in hope. For you, it's the opposite. Some problem happens. Instead of, what can I do to fix this problem? It needs to be, well, what do I think is going to happen? If I do nothing, if I just don't touch it, what's going to happen? And starting to trust your ability to predict the future outcomes, because that's your gift, knowing what's going to change and what's not. And the right people for you are going to be saying, what do you think is going to happen? So finally, and this is the last one, then we can have a little Q&A and then we can just hang out. But is anybody innocents here? Do we have any innocents? Okay, we have one innocent. So if you're innocent, you're in a very special place of basically being outside of motivation. Completely outside. It's like a lack of any motivation is actually correct for you. And what that means to be innocent, it's in some ways it's the most unusual to understand, because it really means having no agenda, having no plan, having no purpose, and essentially all those things get in the way of being observant. So you're here to observe. It's the opposite of us, desire folk, where we're trying so hard to be observant, and that gets in the way of us kind of, we're supposed to have we're supposed to have a very narrow blinders-on view of the world, where this is my thing, this is what I'm doing, I'm locked into it, screw off, don't try to distract me from it, don't pull me away from it, this is what I'm doing, this is my thing. I'm working on the album's going to be done, and nothing will distract me from it. Or I'm working on, anything, any plan, any, agenda, just being locked into that agenda. This is going to get done. Well, for you, it's the exact opposite. You need to have that expansive view. Like, you can't be locked into things like that. You can't be pulled in, with the blinders on. Instead, the right people are going to say, well, what did you notice? What have you observed lately? That's what it's about. To be innocent really means to have no agenda. To be aloof, to be objective. It's like you're the fool on the hill. People go ask you, it's like to kind of, because you're outside of the hustle and bustle. You don't have any, you're unbiased. That's at their best. Now you find these people who are motivated by innocence who are the most desirous people you've ever met. They do everything for a reason, everything for an agenda. They won't go somewhere if they don't have an agenda. They're pursuing romantic interests, they're pursuing jobs, they're pursuing their plans, they're pursuing their whole structured life. I know someone from Seattle who's innocent, and whenever we do anything, he's always directing where we're going, he's always directing. It's like the innocent people are really what we get in this world as our leaders. It's so funny how many of them are so agenda-oriented, so ambitious. And he actually came to visit Santa Fe, but he didn't come here out of innocence. He didn't come here, let's see what happens, to see where the wind blows me. He came with an agenda because there was a woman he met who lived here, and he was pursuing her. So he was just locked in, and she was his world. And so he flew here, and of course his last girlfriend had lived in France, and he'd flown there to see her. Everything he was doing was the desire to go someplace with a goal in mind. With a goal, with an agenda, with tunnel vision. And while he was here, he had no interest in just taking in or observing anything about Santa Fe. He was only interested in her, right? He was completely locked in. So that's what you find, is that innocence people tend to get totally locked into something where they just get tunnel vision and they hone in on it. And so the wrong people for you are really going to start to ask you, well, what's your agenda? What's your plan? Basically they're going to keep locking you further into that desire. The right people for you are going to be saying, what did you observe about that? What did you notice? Because if you know someone who's innocent, they have the cognitive ability to be the most observant people you've ever met. Because they have no agenda there. They're unbiased. You don't ask me what I noticed, because I'm too busy locked into my thing to notice much of anything, right? But you actually ask one of them, and if they're pulled into that, so I'll just finish on this. What's so special about learning motivation, this is something that you can see day to day, and it's something that, it's like nothing is lost. Like, you can be deep in your transference of desire, but somehow your mind has still collected all these observations. And the moment somebody asks you, what did you notice? Suddenly you're pulled back into your correct cognition, and it's like you're a genius. You're pulling out all these amazing observations. It's now same for us, but the opposite way as, desire beings. We can be sitting around smoking pot, playing guitar, whatever, and then the second someone says, look, we all don't know what to do, and we need some leadership, and you go, you know what? I'm in. I'll do it. Then you immediately have the ability to start guiding and locking people in to what is correct for them, right? Or Vaughn, Vaughn could be stuck in need, trying to meet all these different people's needs and thinking about all the needs and what needs, what artistic needs, what niches are there? Oh, there's no one doing this. Oh, this place needs this from me and that place needs that. And then the second you ask Vaughn, well, how are you going to do that? And then Vaughn starts to think about it. Immediately that cognition is there. So that's what this great gift is. It can happen in a second. That's what it really is that, there's that really long-term time frame I started, how the projectors can get so deep into their bitterness over years and years and years, and it takes years to crawl out of that pit. But this is something that you can use in a moment, and you can feel it flicker. You can feel yourself in your correct motivation, and then somebody asks you a question or something, and it pulls you out of it, and you can feel yourself flicker into the wrong one. And it's like taking a misstep. It really feels that way. So I'd like to urge all of you in these coming days and weeks to notice that, to notice when you feel that correct motivation and when you're pulled out of it. All right, thank you so much.
Thanks, Jonah.
Yay. It's okay. No, it's quite all right. All right.
Did I have a question?
Oh yeah, what's your question?
For the people, can you do that for ourselves?
Can you do what for yourselves?
Like, because I often go into situations where like just the situation, like maybe there's not even anyone there, but it's just I ask myself like, how are you gonna do this, and then I like figure it out.
No, that's
Like, I don't need anyone there to be like, do you know what you're doing?
No, that's
Like
that's
I can just
absolutely.
do it for myself.
Well, it's absolutely true. I mean, it's more than just people. I mean, I'm focusing on people because we're talking about mostly for projectors, how important it is for projectors to find other people in their life. But you're absolutely right where it's really about a trajectory, which is like a sequence of events. And so I'll find myself, it's almost like snapping, it's like sobering up. I'll find myself being like, what the fuck have I been doing the last 4 days? I've been so innocent. Like, how did I get so derailed into innocence? Like, I've just been, like, if somebody were, and like, you kind of like wake up, or the opposite. I'll find myself so locked into it, and I'll find myself just so that's what it's really about. It's, you're absolutely correct that certain situations or certain mental habits you'll just notice. And you can kind of align. This is a very mental thing. It's funny because as much as human design is body minded, this is the most mental part of it. So this is like the one part of
I
human
also
design.
feel myself feeling guilty where I'm like, oh, like these really good friends that I haven't talked to in a long time, like they need me to talk to them. And I'm like, I'm being a bad person because I haven't fulfilled their needs to talk to you. Or like just be like, hey, how are you? Like, love ya. You're the best. And I'm like, oh, I'm such a shithead because I haven't been like fulfilling these people's needs.
Right. That absolutely happens. No, it absolutely happens.
I'll probably have to call you on my lunch.
Hi.
Your lunch break.
I thought you were going to start
No, it's okay. We're fine. Oh yeah, we're just recording the Q&A. Well.